The Knights of the Cross by Henryk Sienkiewicz. Every subscription helps me develop this project. Chapter 5. It was in the afternoon that the princess left hospitable Tyniec and went toward Krakow. Often the knights of those times, coming into larger cities or castles to visit some eminent person, used to put on their entire battle armor. It is true it was customary to take it off immediately after they arrived at the gates. In fact, it was the custom for the host himself to invite them to remove it in these words: "Take off your armor, noble lord, you have come to friends." This entrance was considered to be more dignified and to increase the importance of the knight. To conform with this ostentatious custom, Mako and Zbyszko took with them those excellent suits of armor and shoulder bands, won from the conquered Frisian knights, bright, shining, and ornamented on the edges with a gold band. Mikołaj of Długolas, who had seen the world and many knights and was very expert in judging war things, immediately recognized that the suits of armor had been made by a most famous armorer of Milan, armor which only the richest knights could afford, each of them being worth quite a fortune. He concluded that those Frises were mighty lords among their own people, and he looked with more respect on Mako and Zbyszko. Their helmets, although not common ones, were not so rich, but their gigantic stallions, beautifully caparisoned, excited envy and admiration among the courtiers. Mako and Zbyszko, sitting on very high saddles, could look down proudly at the whole court. Each held in his hand a long spear, each had a sword at his side and an axe at the saddle-bow. For the sake of comfort they had left their shields in the wagons, but even without them, both men looked as though they were going to battle and not to the city. Both were riding near the carriage, in which was seated the princess, accompanied by Danusia, and in front of them a dignified court lady, Ofka, the widow of Kristin of Jarzomkov and the old Mikołaj of Długolas. Danusia looked with great interest at the two iron knights, and the princess, pulling from time to time the box with the relics of St. Ptolemaeus from her bosom, raised it to her lips. "I am very anxious to see what bones are inside," said she, "but I will not open it myself, for I do not want to offend the saint. The bishop in Krakow will open it." To this the cautious Mikołaj of Długolas answered, "It will be better not to let this go out of your hands. It is too precious a thing." "Maybe you are right," said the princess after a moment of reflection. Then she added, "For a long time nobody has given me such pleasure as this worthy abbot has by this present, and he also calmed my fears about the relics of the Knights of the Cross." "He spoke wisely and well," said Mako of Bogdaniec. "At Wilno they also had different relics, and they wanted to persuade the guests that they were at war with the heathen. And what? Our knights noticed that if they could only make a blow with an axe, immediately the helmet gave way and the head fell down. The saints help, it would be a sin to say differently, but they only help the righteous, who go to war justly in God's name. Therefore, gracious lady, I think that if there be another war, even if all Germans help the Knights of the Cross, we will overcome them, because our nation is greater, and the Lord Jesus will give us more strength in our bones. As for the relics, have we not a true particle of the Holy Cross in the monastery of Holy Cross?" "It is true, as God is dear to me," said the princess. "But ours will remain in the monastery, while if necessary they carry theirs. No matter, there is no limit to God's power." "Is that true? Tell me, how is it?" asked the princess, turning to the wise Mikołaj of Długolas, and he said, "Every bishop will affirm it. Rome is distant too, and yet the Pope rules over the whole world. Cannot God do more?" These words soothed the princess so completely that she began to converse about Tyniec and its magnificence. The Mazurs were astonished not only at the riches of the abbey, but also at the wealth and beauty of the whole country through which they were now riding. All around were many flourishing villages. Near them were orchards full of trees, linden groves, storks' nests on the linden trees, and beneath the trees were beehives with straw roofs. Along the highway on both sides there were fields of all kinds of grain. From time to time the wind bent the still greenish sea of grain, amidst which shone like the stars in the sky the blue heads of the flowers of the bachelor button and the light red wild poppies. Far beyond the fields appeared the woods, black in the distance but bathed in sunlight. Here and there appeared moist meadows, full of grass and birds flying round the bushes. Then appeared hills with houses, again fields, and as far as one could see, the country appeared to flow not only with milk and honey, but also with quiet and happiness. "That is King Kazimier's rural economy," said the princess. "It must be a pleasure to live here." "Lord Jesus rejoices to see such a country," answered Mikolai of Długolas, "and God's blessing is over it. But how can it be different? When they ring the bells here, there is no corner where they cannot be heard. And it is known that no evil spirit can endure the ringing of the bells, and they are obliged to escape to the forests on the Hungarian frontier." "I wonder," said Paniówka, the widow of Kristin of Jarzomkov, "how Walgier's Dolly, about whom the monk was talking, can appear in Tyniec, where they ring the bells 7 times a day." This remark embarrassed Mikolai for a moment, who, after thinking, quietly said, "In the first place, God's decrees are not well known, and then you must remember that every time he appears he has had special permission. At any rate, I am glad that we shall not pass the night in the monastery. I would die from fear if I saw such an infernal giant. Hey, I doubt it, because they say he is very handsome. If he were very beautiful, I would not want a kiss from such a man, from whose mouth one could smell sulfur. I see that when the conversation is even about devils, you are still thinking about kisses." At these words, the princess, Pan Mikolai, and both Zbyszko of Bogdaniec began to laugh. Danusia laughed also, following the example of the others. But Ofka of Jarzomkov turned her angry face toward Mikolai of Długolas and said, "I should prefer him to you." Don't call the wolf out of the forest," answered the merry Mazur. "The ghost often wanders on the high road between Krakow and Tyniec, especially toward night. Suppose he should hear you and appear to you in the form of a giant." "Let the enchantment go on the dog," answered Ofka. But at that moment Mako of Bogdaniec, who being seated on a high stallion, could see further than those who were in the carriage, reined in his horse and said, "Oh, as God is dear to me, what is it?" "What? Some giant of the forest is coming, and the word became flesh," exclaimed the princess. "Don't say that." But Zbyszko arose in his stirrups and said, "It is true, the giant Walgiers, nobody else."
Remember to subscribe.